They are masters in their fields, brilliant scientists with an unusual mission. They want to track down intelligent life forms in space.
The search for extraterrestrial intelligence is an attempt to find signals coming from planets orbiting distant stars that have patterns, like the kind that we send out in our radio and TV. And if there is ET, we will detect it. Not only that, but we will understand the universe in a way that we don't understand it today.
It's just before dawn in the Sierra Nevada. Rick Forster is setting out early because today he'll get a new tool for his toolbox. A 6-meter diameter satellite dish.
Have fun.
Thank you. See you later.
Bye.
Rick lives in Northern California, far removed from people, cities and flight routes. In an old Ford pickup, he drives every morning to his unusual workplace, a listening post searching for signals from extraterrestrials. Rick is one of a small elite group of scientists promoting perhaps the most bizarre research of all. Those involved call it the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, or SETI for short.
What we're looking for is something like a radio broadcast, which is beamed out in space and pretty much aimed at us. So what's required here is an intelligent civilization with technology advanced enough to be able to produce such a radio tone. What's furthermore required is that they're actually actively trying to contact us.
The hope for SETI lies in the radiation of space. Antennae receive a signal that sounds like a radio that's not tuned into a station. Rick hunts for signals that are contained in this noise, and he's just discovered one.
Whoa.
SETI researchers are looking for a signal that could originate from a highly developed civilization. Sometimes it takes months to get something worth checking out, and then the monitoring computer sounds the alarm.
This is precisely the kind of thing that the SETI algorithms are designed to dig up out of the noise. In this case, this is not anywhere near the noise level. All the background points are much weaker than the strength of this particular signal. So this is very close to what we would expect to see. Unfortunately, it does not pass the tests. The frequencies are right in a band that we know is very contaminated by terrestrial satellites. This is not a transmission from an extraterrestrial civilization.
But where are the presumed ETs hiding? Is this a wild goose chase? Or is the electronic equipment just not sensitive enough yet to track them? To answer this question, Rick Forster and other scientists are building the most sensitive ear of all time, the Allen Telescope Array. Where once there stood only one antenna, in a few years, hundreds shall be listening to space. After an intensive search that resulted in nothing more than false alarms in the past, SETI urgently needs a few successes. According to the researchers' plans, this is what the telescope should look like. 350 antennae, all connected to one another. From the many incoming signals, a supercomputer will calculate a data stream that the researchers can then analyze. The great eavesdropping assault on life forms of space can begin.
There have have been no definite detections of extraterrestrial intelligence signals so far, but SETI has never had a dedicated instrument of their own to use for the search 24/7. So this new array will provide that. It will be used for the search full-time, and this search could provide an answer to the question, are we alone, within the next 5 to 10 years.
Contact with extraterrestrials within the next decade? Such a concept demands an extraordinary amount of imagination. And yet, numerous scientists consider it probable that intelligent life has developed in the depths of the universe. Our solar system is only one of billions in the Milky Way after all. Our system is a tiny little speck on the edge of our galaxy. Are there neighbors living on any of the other specks? The Milky Way, too, is just one of billions of galaxies in space. Lots of room for cosmic neighbors, as one astronomy professor put it back in 1960 when he began looking for them.
My name is Frank Drake, and I conducted the first modern, scientifically based search for evidence of extraterrestrial intelligent life.
Frank Drake is seen as a legend among astronomers today. In 1960, the search for extraterrestrials still belonged only to the realm of science fiction. But Drake saw the chance to expand humanity's horizons and started the initial attempt at establishing contact with potential beings on distant stars.
Our search concentrated on the two nearest stars. We searched with a one-channel radio receiver for 2 months at the radio frequency of the hydrogen atom, and we found no signals from those two stars.
Despite the lack of success, Drake breathed life into a new science and found imitators worldwide. In 1977 in Ohio, a signal was discovered. Calculations resulted in a puzzling combination of numbers. Astronomer Jerry Eman noted the word "wow" on the computer printout, signaling his own excitement. But after 27 seconds, the signal suddenly disappeared. Astronomers tried feverishly to find it again, but to no avail. Even today it remains unexplained where the wow signal actually came from.
No one realizes the power of these parabolic dishes. I can whisper, and even 20 meters away, it is as if I am speaking directly into your ear. A microphone 20 meters away would not know the difference if I whispered into this dish or directly into this microphone. This is how we do the search for extraterrestrial intelligence.
The search for extraterrestrial intelligence and radio astronomy in the following equations. F equals X dot weight plus dot F end of document.
The circle of SETI researchers is small, exclusive, and with exceptions very publicity shy. A tight-lipped group of international specialists. With their extraordinary biographies and resumes, they don't fit into any of the usual molds in the science shop.
I'm Dr. Kent Cullers. I'm a physicist working for many years in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Now I'm a consultant for NASA and the International Astronomical Union.
Kent Cullers is one of the most in-demand SETI specialists in the world. He served as the model for the role of the blind researcher Dr. Clark in the film Contact. Kent Cullers has been sightless since birth. He compensated for his handicap with talent and hard work. His area of specialization is algorithms, mathematical formulae that are said to filter out order from the chaos of the universe.
I developed the methods for looking for television-like signals, the pure carrier notes, and radar-like signals, the pulses or clicks, and I simplified them in the computer so that in fact we could do the work 100 times faster than we ever could before. That doesn't mean they're easy to detect. They might be weak, or they might be complex. The search grows so quickly that in 50 years we will have gone from searching a few hundred stars to searching the galaxy. As a blind physicist, surprisingly enough, I spend a great deal of time doing the equivalent of visualizing. Because if you don't have a picture of the situation, you have no idea whether the answers that come from your equations make sense.
Yes.
What one does in physics is to try to extend the senses, to look at the very large and the very small. I'm looking for something which is understandable but is very distant. So, yes, it's another form of my reaching out.
In his day-to-day life, Ken Cullers relies on assistance, on his Braille computer with which he can type mathematical formulas, and on his wristwatch with a lifting crystal. Perhaps his expertise is so in demand because he develops new ways of deciphering an invisible world every day. Much like their colleagues in California, scientists in Johannesburg are currently planning a new giant telescope that is said to be able to see to the limits of the universe, the SKA. Ken Cullers is taking part in one of the first briefings.
Hi, Kent. Welcome. So the telescope is optimized really for the discovery of the unknown. That's where we suspect our fame and fortune will lie, not in the things that we know that are out there, but for the things that we'll discover that people don't know about.
The SKA will be able to do surveys faster than almost anything else.
It'll work in the range of frequencies that SETI has been predicted. SETI signals have been predicted.
They're going to be very weak, and you really need to optimize the site in order to be able to measure them.
Maybe one can develop an algorithm that simply looks at the radio astronomy data in a sensible way and can look for particular kinds of unusual signals that are not natural.
In researching the universe, the SKA overshadows everything that came before it. 4,500 radio antennae create a gigantic spiral stretching across several countries. 17 governments had to come to an agreement in order to cover construction costs totaling 1.5 billion euros. Several nations applied to serve as locations for this telescope, and after a difficult decision-making process, only South Africa and Australia remain in the running. Both countries have desert-like expanses that have sufficient area for these gigantic installations.
The square kilometer array is vast by comparison to any other radio antenna, and it's in complete synthesis with all of astronomy. Virtually all astronomers believe that there are trillions of planets that are similar to the Earth, and among those there must be intelligence.
For millennia, humans have looked to the stars with fascination, and scholars have posed questions about other life forms out there. Some were sentenced to death for their revolutionary thinking. The celestial canopy, a bell hanging over flat plain. This is how the French astronomer Camille Flammarion depicted it in the 19th century. As early as in antiquity, the Greek philosopher Democritus surmised that the points of light in the sky were distant worlds. He believed that some could be populated with life forms. For his contemporaries, this concept seemed frightening. They thought that the stars rotated around the Earth, very few early astronomers came upon the idea that the stars might be other suns. In the Middle Ages, this idea became more than unpopular. Only visionaries and lateral thinkers allowed themselves to question the prevailing image of the world. The Italian Giordano Bruno viewed the Earth as one planet among many upon which intelligent beings lived. He believed in the infinity of the universe with no limits, filled with countless suns and stars. Soon, the guardians of the faith within the Catholic Church called these ideas into question. In the Vatican, new ideas about the structure of our world were looked upon unfavorably. Whoever deviated from the official position of the Church risked cruel punishment. The Inquisition demanded of Giordano Bruno that he renounce his ideas, but he refused. At the Campo di Fiori in Rome, Bruno was publicly burned at the stake in 1600. To this day, he is considered throughout the world to be a martyr for science. It was only after 400 years that the Papal Council on Culture declared his execution to be unjust. There still has not been a full restitution.
Giordano Bruno wrote that there may be many other universes, and we know that he was burned at the stake. And so people leaped to the conclusion that the one was the reason for the other. In fact, the idea of multiple universes was supported by the Church throughout its history. Thomas Aquinas talks about it. The Bishop of Paris in 1277 said to deny the possibility that God could create other universes would be to deny God's omnipotent power. The reason Giordano Bruno was burned at the stake had nothing to do with his science. It was that he was a strange and crazy man who had a lot of very odd ideas about theology.
Castel Gandolfo, the Pope's summer residence. Since Bruno's time, much has changed in the Vatican. Today, the Holy See employs a dozen astronomers to research space in the name of the Church. Brother Guy Consolmagno studied planetary science at the MIT in Boston. Today, he explores space for the Vatican, and he publishes writings on the search for extraterrestrial intelligence.
That comes to the great question, would you baptize an extraterrestrial? Only if they asked.
Guy, a Jesuit, occupies himself with the border regions between faith and science, even with the scandalous question of who should baptize whom should we come into contact with extraterrestrials.
It turns out that these creatures live on methane and pouring water over them kills them. I don't think we're going to have that style of baptism. On the other hand, we look at the one tradition we've got in our church, the idea of angels and devils. It is obviously a completely different way that they reach salvation. No one says you have to go around baptizing angels. My guess is that these people are in their own relationship with God, should they even exist, and that it will be clear to them, and it'll be clear to us, I hope, by the time we're wise enough to know how to communicate with them, that the question is moot.
For his astronomical studies, Brother Consolmagno also digs through the Holy Scriptures. Are there indications in the Bible of the existence of extraterrestrial beings? Or is man the crowning achievement of God's creation? In the Old Testament, Brother Consolmagno finally comes across something.
Dove sono fissate le sue basi o chi ha posto la sua pietra angolare, mentre i giovano in coro le stelle di mattino e plaudivano tutti I figli di Dio. Where were you when I was making the foundations of the earth, when the morning stars were making joy in chorus and applauding were the sons of God? It's a sense of the joy of the creation of the universe. But built into this image is the idea that even before the world was formed, before Job was around to be so created and so corrected by God, there were these morning stars that also gave glory to God, these sons of God, these other creatures. It's just built into the assumption in the book of Job in the Old Testament that we're not alone. We're not the only ones who worship God.
The papal summer residence has, along with 2 observatories, a laboratory for the analysis of pieces of meteorites from space. Here, Consul Magno examines meteorites very closely, looking for traces of extraterrestrial life. Astronomy is the only worldly science in which the Vatican gets involved.
When you understand how the universe works, you get a little bit of the personality of the Creator. You begin to see the way that He likes to do things. There are all sorts of ways the planets could have been made. By finding out the one way that actually was the way the planets were made, we begin to see the kinds of decisions that the Creator makes.
For some, it is God's work. For others, an astronomical phenomenon. Pieces of rock that fall from time to time out of space down to Earth. And so, Guy Consolmagno is also the curator of one of the largest meteorite collections in the world. The collection includes more than 1,000 pieces housed on the ground floor of the Palazzo of Castel Gandolfo. The men who burned on the pyres of the Inquisition in the Middle Ages would be astounded today by the new openness of the Church with regard to extraterrestrials. But science had an icy relationship with ET until the 1960s, when a sudden thaw took place.
When we speak of life beyond Earth, what we generally mean is, of course, intelligent life, something resembling our noble selves.
It is now okay to talk about life elsewhere or intelligent life elsewhere, whereas a decade or 2 ago, it wasn't okay. More and more
statements such as these had never been made before on American television.
Beyond our dreams.
In the 60s, the USA broke out in SETI fever. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence even occupied politicians. The government apportioned research funds generously. In 1963, the Arecibo telescope was opened in Puerto Rico. It had a 300-meter diameter and lay embedded in a valley basin. With such a super instrument, the search for signals from alien civilizations finally seemed to make sense. The SETI community expected news from the universe any day. But beyond the noise of space and astrophysical objects, the sensitive detectors of Arecibo picked up nothing. After several years of silence, the disappointment spread far and wide. Donors began to doubt whether it made sense to continue. The universe initially had just one message: there's no one out there. Humanity is alone.
Now keep in mind, our galaxy has a few 100 billion star systems. So, if you reduced each one of those stars to the size of a grain of sand, that would be a dump truck full of sand. And the amount of sand we've actually looked at carefully would easily fit into the small palm of your hand. So we've just begun to actually search our own galaxy for other societies. It doesn't surprise me we haven't found them yet. And indeed, at this rate, it would take forever. It would take thousands of years to go through enough sand, if you will, to maybe find something. But fortunately, the search is speeding up, so it's not going to take so long. Welcome to Are We Alone? I'm Seth Shostak, and today we're going to be talking about the new Allen Telescope Array and how this new instrument is going to greatly speed up the search for ET signals. Personally, I'm not interested in finding ET 500 years from now. I'm hoping we're going to find it in the next couple of decades while I might still be walking the planet. So we're going to go to a break now. We'll be right back with Are We Alone?
South of San Francisco lies one of the richest areas in the United States, the Silicon Valley, home of numerous computer companies. Seth Shostak and some of his SETI research colleagues settled here because many people with a penchant for unusual ideas live in this area. And some have the necessary means at their disposal to donate a few million here and there to projects like SETI.
It's hard to believe that 30 and 40 years ago this was all agricultural land. They grew fruit here. The fruit trees are gone now. The orchards are gone.
Seth works as an astronomer for the SETI Institute in Mountain View, an independent research installation whose goal is to explore the origin and prevalence of life in the universe. Publicity work, with the help of SETI's own radio program, are also part of his responsibilities. The SETI Institute employs about 100 scientists researching the development of life in space. Their most important objective is the establishment of the Allen Telescope Array in Northern California. Financing for this project has posed the greatest challenge for Seth and his colleagues.
For about 15 years, SETI was a NASA program. At least most SETI in this country was being sponsored by NASA. It wasn't very expensive. It was 1/1000th of the total NASA budget, even when it was at its height. Now, that was all stopped in 1993.
Disenchantment continued in the 1990s. What successes could SETI demonstrate? Wasn't all of this a waste of taxpayers' money? Who even found this research useful? The US Congress suddenly started posing similar questions and cut all funding to NASA for its SETI activities. It's not hard to make fun of the search for aliens. In 30 years, not one Martian has been discovered, senators concluded. From the 1970s on, William Proxmire fought against research projects he found to be senseless. He awarded SETI his Golden Fleece Award, a prize for the biggest waste of money in the nation. Researchers countered with their own image campaigns, but in 1993, the SETI department at NASA was closed, and the champions of thrift in Congress triumphed. Astronomer Jill Tarter was the project director at that time. From one day to the next, she was suddenly out of a job, and her life's work went along with it.
Losing the NASA funding, that is, having Congress terminate the funding for NASA, was incredibly difficult. It was a huge roller coaster ride. Many of my colleagues and I were pretty devastated.
Quitting was not an option for her. Today, Jill Tarter is directing a new SETI project, the construction of the Allen Telescope Array.
This is actually the working part of the radio telescope. I always think it looks like something from the Saturday morning Flash Gordon cartoons, right? The death race.
Jill Tarter is the grande dame of SETI research. In 2004, Time magazine chose her as one of the 100 most important people in the world. In the movie Contact, she was played by Jodie Foster. But in 1993, Tarter had no more hope of being paid as a SETI researcher. She understood the need to pull up her sleeves and become independent.
We sat around a conference table and we started reading books on how to raise money. And there was only one chapter of each of the books that we read, and that was how to make the big ask. We needed a lot of money, and we needed it very quickly, so we had to focus on donors with large potential for giving.
Millions were raised to build the array on the lava rock of the Sierra Nevadas. Microsoft's co-founder, Paul Allen, financed a big part of the Allen Telescope Array's dishes. The billionaire picked up the $25 million tab for the installation that bears his name. It should be completed within the next few years.
You can see a name up on that telescope. Elliot Gillum is on this side. On the other side, if you could see it, is the name Dane Glasgow. These are two young Microsoft engineers who think that our technology is terrific, and they pooled their funds and got a matching grant from Microsoft for their philanthropic contribution, and so they now own this telescope, and they enjoy watching it on the webcam and have been helping us out with some new software.
Okay, so everybody can buy one of those telescopes?
You can buy a telescope and have your name put on it, and the price tag's $100,000, which is a big number in some sense, but a very small number for a radio telescope.
A radio telescope is only useful if it's far from radios, which means it has to be far from people. So I'm standing in the Karoo semi-desert which is a part of South Africa where you can hear the sounds of little grasshoppers and things like that. But there are no people and there are no radios anywhere nearby, so that when we look for a radio signal from space, we don't accidentally find radio signals from Earth.
Ken Culler's mission is to find an appropriate location for a competing telescope that will be financed primarily by the European Union, the SKA project.
Okay, so I can tell by the quality of the land. It could be quiet. There aren't cell phones, right? You already said that.
No, we must drive about 16 kilometers to get a signal.
Yes.
And we have only the telephone that isn't very good. And we have the radios to talk if there's a problem in the area.
And that's what, called citizens band or amateur radio or...
Amateur radio.
Yeah.
Willie Lowe operates a farm in this desolate area. He doesn't realize that he just gave Kent bad news. The farmer's ham radios are sources of disturbance for the planned radio telescope.
As you can see in the distance, it's the Karibberg Mountains.
Ah, yes.
You can look at, from distances without seeing any people or anything.
Yes, and the mountains protect us from radio signals because we're looking far into space, and we don't want to get radio signals from here.
Yeah.
So.
The greatest advantage of this location is the dryness. Rain does not fall here for months at a time.
We need places that have only millimeters of rain per year. It can be several millimeters, but it's got to be in that range. And I've never been before any place that the rain level is so perfect for radio astronomy.
The question of where to place a radio telescope is one of the most difficult decisions for astronomers. But another question racks their brains even more. Which of the billions of stars in the sky should SETI be listening in on? Since the radio telescopes can only consecutively listen for one star, the question of where will decide the success of SETI research. For astronomer Lawrence Doyle, this question has brought many sleepless nights. He uses the nighttime hours for research and goes to work when others are calling it a day. To track the locations where our neighbors in space live, he has dedicated himself to the hunt for planets outside our solar system, the extrasolar planets. They are so far away, they cannot be seen even by the largest observatories. For years, science knew nothing about extrasolar planets. Astronomers could only guess that they must exist, but no one had actually seen one. In 1995, Michel Mayor and his co-worker Didier Queloz discovered the first extrasolar planet. It proved to be gigantic. But Lawrence Doyle is looking for something else. He is interested in small planets, those that would look like our Earth, and those are hard to find.
The reason extrasolar planet detection is important to SETI is because we want to give SETI the correct targets to listen for possible radio signals. Basically, as far as we know, life originates and lives on planets. So if we can find planets of the right size and distance from their star, we can give exact targets for listening for extraterrestrial radio signals.
Planets are so hard to discover because in comparison to stars, they are small and dark. One star shines with the strength of billions of hydrogen bombs going off every second, while planets only reflect the light of stars. To find these dark heavenly bodies, astronomers must use a trick.
What I'm doing right now is I'm measuring the brightness of the stars in this image. Basically, we can take pictures of about 50,000 stars at once, and we measure the brightness variation in image after image, and we make a plot of that brightness variation with time. The brightness has changed here, and we suspect that this is due to a planet moving across this star. The planet has moved across this star and cast its shadow on the Earth.
The transit method is one of astronomers' favorite tricks for discovering extrasolar planets. For the telescope, the planet remains invisible, but a change in the star's brightness occurs as the planet crosses in front of it, and that gives the planet away. Using the data, researchers can even calculate the size of the planet and the chemical composition of its atmosphere. Up to this point, about 200 planets, mostly large ones, have been found. But Lawrence and his colleagues are looking for the small ones, those that resemble our Earth, preferably surrounded by an oxygen-rich atmosphere, for there they could suspect the existence of life. In 2007, a team of European researchers discovered the first planet resembling Earth, Gliese 581c. This created a sensation for astronomy and hope for SETI. Now, people in the field could work from the assumption that planets like Earth are not a rarity. The newly discovered planet is far enough from its star that moderate temperatures could in fact exist. Whether life exists there, however, is still unknown.
I'm Dr. Paul Schuck, the Executive Director Emeritus of the grassroots nonprofit SETI League, the world's largest organization of SETI enthusiasts. As some have hypothesized, we inhabit a universe that's teeming with life, then at least some of those civilizations out there will have developed radio communications. We on Earth are in our radio communicative phase, and we have the technology, perhaps for the first time in human history, to detect artificial radio emissions from other stars. My satellite antenna is pointed at the sky, but I'm not watching television, let me tell you why. I'm searching for existence proof of any alien race by sifting through the microwaves that fall from outer space. I'm a part of the search that's known as SETI. I'm a believer with a good receiver. There are coherent signals beaming at me, and when I find one, then I'll say, wow. For a brief time in human history, we had a modestly funded NASA SETI program, and although the NASA SETI search was planned to run for 10 years, just 1 year after they started it, Congress pulled the plug on NASA SETI, terminated the project entirely, proving, of course, that there is no intelligent life in Washington.
Paul Schuck fosters a pronounced mistrust of governmental organizations. His course of action is DIY. In the 1960s, he invented the first commercial satellite receiver. He used his patent income to fulfill his dream, his own SETI station behind his house. He lovingly christened his equipment, which he built himself, the Very Small Array. Due to conflicts with his neighbors, Paul had to plant a row of trees to block the view of the array.
3 months out of the year, this array is deep in snow and not even usable. Fortunately, the snow is now melted, so I'm doing my spring cleanup. And we have hornets that like to build nests in our antennas, and
Best time to remove them, of course, is during their dormant season so that we don't get stung. Oh, that one's beautiful.
Paul Schuck wants to prove to his colleagues in the Silicon Valley that SETI can get by even without donations from the computer industry, with simple but ingenious tricks.
Ultimately, our signals find their way into a standard coffee tin. We found fortuitously that a 3-pound coffee tin is exactly the right size to capture the lengths of the microwaves that we're looking for. And of course, we have our choice of any coffee brand. I selected for my antenna feeds chock full of nuts, because there are those who believe that this brand eloquently describes the whole SETI enterprise.
There is an alarm. A colleague from Germany has discovered a noteworthy signal and asks Paul for help.
Give me a frequency, Peter. 14.
Peter Wright in Heidelberg would like to check whether Paul is receiving the signal on his equipment too.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm getting something. Red ascension? Check. It's right there, yeah. And it's pretty strong too.
The members of Paul's SETI League use their worldwide network to protect themselves against false alarms. One telescope alone can quickly catch a terrestrial interference signal, but when that signal can be heard on the other side of the planet, the chances that it is really from space increase.
It's peaked, it's at S3 now. Yeah, it's pretty strong. Yeah, I think so, probably too strong. Clearly satellite interference. It's not terrestrial, and it's not ETI. Very good. Take care. Back to work. Well, that was exciting for about 30 milliseconds. It looked awfully like ETI at first, but it was just another low Earth orbit satellite. We get so much satellite interference. About once every couple of months we get one that looks really promising. But the way we tell that it's not the real thing is by what we just did here, Peter and I, independent verification from a distant location. That's the strength of the SETI League. With multiple people, different parts of the world working together, we can verify each other's hits or disprove them if it happens to be something that's not for real.
The search for extraterrestrials as popular sport, with homemade equipment? Radio technology professor Peter Wright demonstrates in his garden outside Heidelberg that SETI is also possible for small budgets. The Scottish native's goal is to get as many amateur researchers as possible excited about the idea.
Devices like this look very, very expensive at first glance. In fact, the prices are extremely reasonable. At some flea markets you can find real bargains. Spending 25 euros, you might get a device that, back then, cost thousands. You set the dish up in the back garden, using 3 bricks so that the thing points upwards. It looks like an oversized bird bath. And you put a little feeder in the middle, which is relatively easy to make yourself. There are already commercial receivers that you can use and software too. They go for around 2,000 or 3,000 euros, say. So effectively, anyone can participate. And that's the whole idea of Project Argus, making these really simple things that everyone can use to join in.
The annual meeting of the SETI League takes place in Heidelberg. Peter Wright describes the advances of his listening equipment. Others, too, have brought along their self-made antennae and are presenting small discoveries and big ideas.
The next lecture is about to start. Please go once again to the lecture room, please.
I'm a part of the search that's known as SETI. I'm a believer with a good receiver.
The highlight of the event, as it is every year, is a concert by Dr. SETI, as Paul Schuck calls his alter ego. The songs he writes about the search for extraterrestrial intelligence are motivational music for his SETI League. Membership numbers have stagnated in recent years, as ET has still not called. Beyond false alarms, the self-made antennae haven't picked up anything. Thus, Dr. SETI has to sing his heart out to keep his followers together, much like a shepherd keeping his flock.
Good receiver. There are coherent signals beaming at us, and when we find one, we'll all say, wow, it's gonna happen any decade now. After nearly a half-century of SETI science, we look back upon 50 years of solitude, and sometimes we begin to ask, are we pursuing a futile quest?
Ken Cullers, too, along with his SETI colleagues, sometimes ask themselves if they're headed down the right path. Will they live to see the day when contact is established?
The belief right now is very strong among scientists that we are not a cosmic miracle. You can actually do a calculation to convince yourself of that. That calculation convinces me. I won't try to convince everyone else with it, but I wouldn't spend 25 years of my life looking for signals that I didn't think were there.
Visitors will often kind of sidle up to me and be chummy and say, well, what have you seen that's interesting lately? You know, is there something that you haven't told the public about yet, that's kind of in the works? And I just have to say, no, not yet.
You know, I think everybody who has been involved with SETI, deep down inside, I think their number one wish is that the experiment will succeed while they're still around to see that happen. You know, it would be a shame to retire, to die, and not see any success. I think that would be unfortunate, but it might happen.
We know the end result, the discovery, is going to be so important to our whole civilization, not just to science, but to our culture, to our technology, to our philosophy, to our plans for the future. All of these things will be impacted in a great way by the discovery. And, you know, you only live once. And you want to spend your life doing something which you think is very important. And detecting another civilization is, to me and the other people who work in this field, the most important thing we could be doing.
Some people suggest that if you saw an intelligent alien at a distance in a twilight, you might mistake them for human. I don't know. Nature's really very inventive. And my definition of intelligence is the ability to build and operate some kind of transmitter that can be detected over interstellar distances. If it's little green men, big blue women, anything in between, it's fine with me.
Meanwhile, workers at the Allen Telescope Array are continually constructing new antennae. The worldwide establishment of interstellar listening posts makes tracking extraterrestrial signals more probable with each passing day. But what would the consequences of such a discovery be for our lives? And how dangerous would contact with aliens be?
I can conceive of no nightmare as terrifying as establishing such communication with the so-called superior, or if you wish, advanced technology in outer space.
Extraterrestrials. Do they really exist? Or are aliens a recent invention by Hollywood designers?
Parts of his mouth move, the brain pulsates. You can see the expression on the face and the detailing of it.
Scientists examine visions of the future very carefully. What is really behind the UFO sightings in Nevada?
We saw a great big disc. It covered 3-4 city blocks.
The search for aliens is a grey area between science and science fiction. Astronomers are already developing scenarios for the day when we make contact. How will we communicate with them?
And here we go, breathing again, going down.
Can the language of intelligent sea creatures help us understand interstellar communication complexity?
My name's Lawrence Doyle. I'm a principal investigator at the SETI Institute, and I look for extrasolar planets, and I study animal communications with the idea of applying it to the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. We have a wonderful opportunity on this planet to begin to understand non-human communication systems. We are recording humpback whales and bottlenose dolphins and gray whales and other animals with the idea of eventually deciphering an extraterrestrial signal if we get one.
Conditions are excellent today. This is perfect. This is about the best weather we could possibly ask for. They say that we've got less than a meter of swell, good number of miles off the coast, so right now it's going to be pretty still out in the bay, and it'll be really wonderful.
For decades, researchers have been racking their brains, trying to figure out how they might one day decipher messages from extraterrestrial intelligence. The initial steps are being taken here in Monterey Bay. For the first time, an astronomer and a marine biologist are working together to research whale communication. Their goal is to find communication's universal determiners.
Yeah, the first of the gray whales are coming up from Baja, California. And we're right at the edge of Monterey Bay here on the south side. And because there have been wild orcas in the bay itself, even though it's a good place to feed, a lot of the gray whales may opt to bypass Monterey Bay. So they have the option of coming in here with good feeding, but the potential of getting attacked by orcas, or they can just run right across the bay.
Sean Hanser is preparing for underwater recording. He can only guess at what an extraterrestrial signal might sound like, but he knows whale voices. He has already recorded several types of marine mammals. Today, he hopes to eavesdrop on grey whales for the first time.
This is a hydrophone, or an underwater microphone. So when we put it in the water, we can record many sounds, everything from very deep sounds to things that are much higher than we can hear. This one is one that we've been very pleased with, and we've had it for a few years. We've recorded a number of whale species with it.
After 2 hours, a pod of grey whales comes into view.
Yeah, so we've got a group of active whales. Looks like, what would you call it, a couple, 3 miles ahead? Or
right now, I'm trying to get an idea exactly which direction they're going, because like you saw that last group, they do a lot of zigzagging.
For 3 days now, they've been following the whales' movements, so far without success. Patience is one of Lawrence Doyle's virtues. While looking for extraterrestrial intelligence, he's grown accustomed to waiting.
Here we go, breathing again, going down.
There, see the breath? Working with whales, I realize how really different they are. They grew up on the same planet, under the same star as we have, and yet we don't share anything in common. And I think this is preparing us, if we ever get an extraterrestrial signal, to handle something really alien and to stretch our thought, to deprovincialize our attitudes toward interspecies communication. We have enough trouble communicating with each other, and we're all the same species. It's a stretch to even communicate with other terrestrial species. If we get an extraterrestrial signal, we're going to have practiced.
In Moscow, too, there are those who would like to communicate with extraterrestrials. Not in the distant future, but right now. Radio engineer Alexander Zaitsev has developed a method by which he can shoot messages as far as the most remote corners of the Milky Way to an unknown recipient.
I'd like to make one thing clear. Some think our message should be short, while others say it should contain a lot of information. We've been discussing this question for a while now, and both sides have their supporters.
Zaitsev has already sent several messages into space on a directive from the Russian Academy of Sciences. The name of their project is METI, or Messaging to Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Together with his Moscow METI group, Zaitsev is planning the next transmission to the aliens. Before they reach that point, however, they will still have to decide which star they should send it to.
It's like this. My mind is constructed in such a way that this field interests me. You know, some people are interested in saving up to buy a Lexus. Not me. And anyway, I don't earn enough for that. But planning interstellar radio messages, now that I can do well.
But not everyone is thrilled with the activities of the Russians. Astronomer and author David Brin thinks Zaitsev is naive and his plans extremely dangerous. Brin fears that extraterrestrial life forms with malevolent intent could come to us and annihilate our planet.
Physical harm is a possibility. A bomb sent through space is much easier to send than a starship full of colonists. There have been many science fiction scenarios in which intelligent bombs can be sent to a new civilization that is broadcasting into space in order to prevent them from becoming competitors. It is possible mathematically to create machines that can go from one place to another place and to mine raw materials and make copies of themselves. This is called a von Neumann machine. I am not claiming that there are a million deadly, horrible, evil von Neumann probes near our solar system ready to pounce on us. What I am saying is that there is no proof that there are not.
Does this man truly pose a danger to humanity? He sees himself as an emissary representing Earth in space. In his laboratory, Alexander Zaitsev is currently developing the technical specifications for a new message. He acknowledges criticism from the scientific community with magnanimity. Nevertheless, he keeps pushing his project forward. For the time being, no one can hinder him. In order to complete his mission, Zaitsev needs a certain chip that generates analog signals from a computer file.
The text of interstellar message from laptop come here at interface which transform our digital information into the analog radio signal. For these purposes, we use this large-scale integrated circuit, and the old device with similar function has a very large size. You may compare our new device with old one. And after transformation, this radio signal go to the power transmitter, to antenna, into the cosmos. See?
A radio program aimed at aliens is currently broadcasting. Today, the producer is filming a commercial to increase his sales figures in space.
Hello out there, I'm Dr. David Livingston, and I'm the host and the founder of the spaceshow.com. I have a message for you. We need to know how to get affordable, low-cost space transportation that is safe. on and off Earth. We need your help. I promise we'll be good participants in the intergalactic community. Guaranteed.
This seemingly crazy radio transmission to aliens is made possible by an agency in Florida. With the help of a mobile transmission device, the company sends interstellar messages for just $99. For anyone who ever wanted to tell ET something but couldn't until now. The state of Florida issued a permit without question.
My name is Jim Lewis, and I'm with Deep Space Communications Network. We're sending private messages for various people and organizations into space.
Jim transmits anything that is not morally objectionable, be it text, video, or music. The customer must only prove that he holds the copyright on the material.
Technically it works. We process the video signal through the electronics equipment, send it to the RF transmitters, and transmit the signal out the antenna to deep space.
Hello out there, I'm Dr. David Livingston, and I have a message for you.
Some people email us the messages, some people upload them on our website, and others send them to us if they're larger messages by CD or DVD or tape.
Will you share your technology with us? Surely you're doing it somewhat better than what we can do with our chemical rockets. We need your help.
Well, after every transmission, we fill out a transmission log. It's certified by the engineer. It tells the time, the power that the transmitters were set at, the elevation and azimuth of the transmission antenna, so you can get some calculations of where the message went in space, and we certify it and we send that to whatever client we've sent the message into space for.
The people at deep space have been warned of all the possible dangers. Still, Jim Lewis doesn't have a guilty conscience. After all, they are not the only ones. All our TV stations are sending images into space every day.
I think it's quite naive to think that we're not sending messages into space every day through various forms of electronic communications equipment we have on Earth. So we're constantly sending messages into space.
However visible we are, they want to make us more visible. And they seem to think it's necessary to make us more visible in order to achieve their end of going, yoo-hoo, yoo-hoo, hello. So this whole business of saying that we're already visible is nonsense. They want us to be more visible. That is their goal. And all we want is to say, let's meet with the world's scientists and with wise people and talk about it.
The worldwide boom in scientific and private transmissions into space moved the International Astronomical Society into action. Every year, the big guns of the space travel industry meet to exchange information about the newest technical and political developments. At their Congress in Valencia, an international agreement is on the docket. It's supposed to forbid the transmission of messages to extraterrestrials. For some scientists and politicians, the threat to the Earth from aliens has long been more than the stuff of science fiction. Former US diplomat Michael Michaud helped start this initiative.
If you travel at 1/10 the speed of light and you're coming from the nearest star, it would take 43 years for you to reach the Earth. That sounds like a long time to a human, but what if the spacecraft coming in this direction is not inhabited but is a machine? It doesn't care about the passage of time. What if the people who send it, or the possibly machines who send it, have indefinite lifespans? What if they live for thousands of years? A 43-year trip may not matter.
The conference in Valencia is divided. Those in favor of the agreement warn of the danger that could be lying in wait for humanity. The others see their scientific work being threatened by such an international agreement. Alexander Zaitsev is not present at the Congress, but in the end, there's good news for him. The group working on the agreement can reach no accord, and Zaitsev may continue transmitting completely legally. Michael Michaud, meanwhile, must continue to fight for a treaty.
Something that will change the picture again. At any rate,
the important thing is that there be international consultation before we send out a powerful message to another civilization.
As early as 1989, Michael Michaud began working on a UN agreement to regulate communication with extraterrestrials. It forbids scientists from responding to signals from deep space without prior consultation with the international community. The general sending of messages, however, is not regulated by this agreement. Michaud and others want to correct this oversight now. Their proposed treaty, however, is far from being put into practice internationally. It's disputed in the scientific community, and the UN at this point is showing no interest in it.
You have to look at the possibility that there might be civilizations that are not sympathetic to us, that do even regard us as a potential threat in the long term. I don't know what the answer to this is, but what we need is a discussion among intelligent people that reviews all the possibilities and gives some weight to what is most likely to happen. And then hopefully we can reach a conclusion that will enable us to either send a very carefully drafted message or perhaps to do nothing at all.
But messages have already been on their way through space for a long time, and no one can stop them. The most spectacular one was the Voyager project in the 1970s. 2 space probes were supposed to examine the outermost planets of our solar system. Once their task was completed, they would disappear into the expanse of the universe as deep space scrap metal. But NASA quickly realized that Voyager could take on a much greater task as humanity's ambassador in space.
Because Voyager was going to be the first spacecraft to reach interstellar space, it was decided to put on it a message from Earth. And the message was in the form of an analog, old-fashioned analog record, which has grooves in it, but was done in such a way that it has not only sounds, but also images of Earth.
Frank Drake was one of the creators of this record. A duplicate is still in his attic today, and for special occasions, he gladly brings it out again.
This is the cover of the box which holds the golden record on the Voyager 1 and 2 spacecraft. I designed all the diagrams which are on this cover, including the part that shows looks to be like a spider. That's actually showing the location of the Earth with respect to other stars, and the hydrogen atom, which is used as the time standard.
The message from Earth was supposed to be recognizable at first glance by extraterrestrials, and it was therefore decided to attach it to the exterior of the probe. That meant that it had to be well protected against the ravages of space and time. After all, its discoverers could be listening to it millions of years from now. The best material for the record and its casing proved to be gold. To make it easier for its discoverers, Drake provided an instruction manual and a playback device. The question that challenged him most was what information the golden record should contain. What would interest extraterrestrials the most?
We recognized that it was silly to send scientific information. They know all that. But they would want to know the nature of our planet because it's probably special, and particularly what we are like physiologically, but also sociologically.
Images from Earth were encoded in the grooves of the Golden Record. Frank Drake made every effort to construct as balanced a picture of our planet as possible, capturing a snapshot of our civilization in the 70s.
We now had the technology for the first time to take such a message beyond the solar system into interstellar space. So it was just one more example of the state of our technology that allowed us to, in fact, send this message out deep into space.
Greetings in 22 languages.
Herzliche Grüße an alle.
Hello from the children of planet Earth.
Shalom. धरती के वासियों की ओर से नमस्कार. Hola y saludos a todos.
Sounds from the Earth. And music, from Louis Armstrong to Johann Sebastian Bach.
Our sun is going to expand and consume the Earth in about 4 billion years from now. Yet these two records will still be flying through space and may be the only thing which will show anybody after that time that we ever existed. And so I think these have a very special significance, and I'm proud to have been part of making them.
And in this millennium, another interstellar message in a bottle is being planned. A space travel company is working on spreading the last secret of human existence throughout the universe. They plan to send our genetic code out into space, with best regards from children all over the world.
Привет, инопланетяне! Космос, космос, я Земля. Хочу наладить контакт. Дорогие инопланетяне, будьте хорошими, и мы вас примем на нашу Землю. Как вы там живете? Если хотите, прилетите к нам на Землю. У нас тоже хорошо.
The project plans to include a hair from each child, the idea being that a hair's root contains our DNA, and by extension, everything that a highly developed civilization needs to know about the human race.
Здравствуйте, меня зовут Тайсон. Я хочу вам передать мои волосы, чтобы вы потом сделали меня такой же. Для того, чтобы инопланетяне могли сделать мое фото. Привет с другой планеты.
Will strange beings one day clone these children? Just because a space travel company wants to make money? There are warning voices.
The SETI community had this image that all advanced alien races are altruistic. I don't know that that's true. There's no evidence for this. It is possible that there may be advanced alien races out there that are not altruistic. If so, do they have ways to harm us? I don't know. That's the key point. We don't know.
Alexander Zaitsev has sent several messages from this Black Sea location. The Yevpatoria radio telescope is one of only 2 giant antennae in the world with mega transmitters. Still, Zaitsev's visit to the Ukraine can become problematic. He knows that he hasn't exactly made friends everywhere with his plans.
It's a difficult question, as I'm sure you understand. It's clear to me, more or less. But when I start to explain it to people who have a different point of view, they don't understand me. I only know a few people who share my position.
Although Zaitsev has had his appointment with the telescope for months, no one will open the gate for him. In the past, the telescope belonged to Zaitsev's Institute in Moscow, but since the demise of the Soviet Union, it falls under the domain of the Ukrainian Science Ministry. The Science Ministry in Kiev has informed Zaitsev that although the mission is indeed approved, nothing can be done about the resistance in Yevpatoria. For Zaitsev, the silent criticism of his colleagues in the Ukraine is incomprehensible.
I can't understand that there is this sort of Kafkaesque theatre of the absurd here on the holy ground of Crimea. I don't understand. Does anyone understand this? Because I don't. It's such an idiotic situation. It couldn't be more absurd. But what can I do? Sadly, I have to say that I must take my leave of Yevpatoria. Farewell, Yevpatoria. That's it.
What kind of messages does a species whose communication we cannot understand send? To decipher unknown signals, Lawrence Doyle and Sean Hanser are calculating the mathematical structure of communication systems, first of whales, and then later, perhaps, those of extraterrestrials.
Drop in the hydrophone. We can record whales from a pretty good distance. Their vocalizations travel well, especially the low ones in the water. So we're going to actually put in the hydrophone and allow them to approach and pass us and record the sounds from the whales as they go by. When I speak, you're going to hear me on the other side.
The recording begins, and then they hear it. The whales' communication. The sounds seem as though they come from another world. For his research, Doyle uses information theory, a branch of applied mathematics and engineering. This method was invented for the telephone industry and calculated the quantity of information being imparted during conversations over distance. Doyle is the first to apply information theory to dolphins and whales.
We think there's survival value in animals being able to recover lost signals, especially whales. They have to signal each other in order to mate. They have to coordinate fishing and feeding behavior. And so applying information theory to them is helping us understand the complexity of their communication system better. By the way, for an extraterrestrial signal, it will also allow us to figure out how complex that communication system is.
There are those that claim SETI researchers will be better off aiming their receivers at Los Angeles than into space. And perhaps there is some truth in that. After all, the physiognomy or physical form of extraterrestrials was not created in space, but here. For years, Hollywood has been providing answers to science's questions. All children know what aliens look like, and at night, famous figures from horror and science fiction movies meet along the Walk of Fame. This is the workshop of alien designers Alec Gillis and Tom Woodruff. These two Oscar winners have played a significant role in helping to create our image of extraterrestrials.
Well, when we're called upon to create an alien, especially for a movie, our goal is to come up with something that is going to satisfy, first of all, the needs of the story. Sometimes the aliens are supposed to be dangerous, sometimes they're supposed to be more thoughtful or benign, sometimes their motives are supposed to be in question. So our goal is to create a look of a creature that can be interpreted by the audience to fulfill those needs.
There is a theory in xenobiology that in order for there to be life on another planet, it would probably be in some way similar to some version of life that we have here on this planet. In other words, you wouldn't have things that are completely unreal or completely illogical. You might have things that live in extreme environments, like, you know, tube worms that live in high temperature water, sulfuric water in the bottom of the ocean or something. And that's about as alien as you can get. My philosophy has always been that the weirdest things are right in your front lawn.
For his utopian picture book, Worlds, Alec gathered inspiration from the Earth and combined the measurements of limbs from different species. In this manner, he created believable beings. But there is disagreement within the scientific community as to whether extraterrestrial life must resemble that on Earth. Perhaps creatures await us whose form is beyond our perception. In any event, Hollywood sets very practical standards for how aliens look.
This is the alien from Alien Resurrection.
The creature has a very long neck, and part of that is a design consideration that we like to, give it a sort of long vulture neck. But in reality, Tom's head is right in this area, and we've given him these little sculptural details that he can see through and breathe through. So not only do we have to think about designing for the movie and for the character, we also think about how practical is it going to be for the performer inside the suit.
This was meant to be very deadly, very dangerous, and very, very ominous, scary looking. The almond-shaped eyes that are sort of upswept to the outside, a very small mouth, a very almost featureless kind of nose, and around that you sort of work in elements that work in terms of inciting some kind of a response of fear. We have really deep sunken cheeks here to make the cheekbones really prominent, sunken temples here. And all of this is kind of gauged around giving it more of a skull-like image with the brows and cheekbones here.
We do shape public opinion about what aliens might look like, but in a way we help the world to identify either their fears or their hopes in these designs. And we identify them by the work that we design. The creature behind me represents a fear, whereas a creature like E.T. represents a hope.
The success of many science fiction films demonstrates the great fascination that aliens hold for humans. In the 50s, the myth of UFOs was born. Soon, the media were reporting on anything that looked like a saucer and could fly.
Ever been skeptical of flying saucers? Well, would you believe a real-life saucer aircraft right out of science fiction? It's the after-hours pet project of aeronautics professor Paul Muller of the University of California, who is ready to test fly it. Its diameter is 14 feet. Everybody ready?
At the same time, fears grew of enemy UFOs capable of destroying the Earth and wiping out humanity. How probable are these scenarios? How do scientists gauge the possibility that extraterrestrials could one day land on Earth?
Of the future. Help wanted, a crew of little green men.
You know, it's a great distance between stars, and we really don't know with our technology and with the science we have, not only our technology, but our understanding of science, there is no practical way to get to another star. Communicating will be, in fact, electronically, with radio waves, will in fact be the main way that we will ever have contact with another intelligent being.
It's possible to propose scenarios where you send self-replicating robots at slow speed. But what does this do for you? Why would you do that? particularly, as some people have said, that those robots may go crazy and turn on you and attack you.
Physical contact, I think, based on the science we know today, is just not feasible.
Still, many believe that UFOs have been coming here for a long time and that the US government has classified the information. Over and over, representatives of the Air Force must make themselves available for TV interviews.
The Air Force has been accused from time to time of hiding information about UFO. What do you have to say to that kind of thing?
Those charges are absolutely untrue. Actually, the United States Air Force releases statistics on the UFO phenomena through the Department of Defense press desk periodically. And we've always honored accredited media when they want to investigate a given specific sighting.
There's nothing to hide.
There's nothing to hide at all.
So where do the countless reports of UFO sightings come from? Are all of these photographs deceptively doctored mock-ups? Many of these cases stem from optical illusions or homemade models held up by fishing lines in the picture. But for many other instances, science offers no explanation. It happens all over the world, but there is one place where more alleged UFOs have been sighted than anywhere else. In Nevada, many consider the search for extraterrestrial intelligence to be needless. On this road, unusual flying devices are regularly spotted. The extraterrestrial highway. Are aliens already here? The Little Alien is the only bar within 50 miles and the only meeting place for the inhabitants of Rachel, a town that is really nothing more than a collection of mobile homes. At the Little Alien, some of the regulars are convinced that we are being visited regularly by extraterrestrials.
I do believe that they are out there. In '72, I was about 9 years old. And me and my oldest sister were at a family reunion, and both of us saw the same thing at the same time. And we saw a great big disc, and it covered 3-4 city blocks. This was in Southern California, broad daylight, and turn around to look to see where everybody was at. They were gone. Turn around and look again, and they were there.
Glenn, the Little Alien cook, has been watching a very noticeable light in the sky for weeks. He doesn't think it's an ordinary heavenly body.
That is not a star. It's too low to the ground.
What do you think it is?
I have no idea what it is, but Sunday night or Saturday night, there was a red light on one side and an orange light on one side, and there was no light in the center. And then the following night, there was a bright light and no red and no orange, and it's exactly in the same spot almost all the time.
Is that on a mountain, maybe?
No.
It's not very high.
No, that's over the Tonopah test site. At the beginning of the night, it's kind of high. And then about this time, about anywhere between 9 and 11 o'clock, it drops altitude, and it sits there, and it stays. It just hovers.
What lies hidden behind this lighted point that so perplexes residents and visitors along the extraterrestrial highway? Is it possible that UFOs are hovering over the Nevada desert, undetected by radar or by the US Air Force? Why is there so little scientific interest in these phenomena?
I don't know. I watch it every night. Make sure that, make sure I'm not seeing things.
Well, who are any of us? Okay, fair enough.
You have people who
are interested in the kind of in the myth. They just want to come out here and see if it's true. Or you have people that have had some type of experience with, I don't know, lights or a craft or something. And so they want to come here and talk to other people that have had a like experience, or find out what other experiences that person has had, and things like that.
The secret is located behind a chain of hills stretching out along the extraterrestrial highway. Tucked away in a valley basin lies the Nellis Air Force Base testing ground, where the Air Force tests out combat aircraft prototypes, just a few miles from the Rachel Mobile Home Park. Dave Sims is retired and spends the hot desert days on his homemade viewing platform. From here, he has a good view of the unidentified flying objects of the US Air Force. Many of the new fighter planes are classified. Rising from the silence of the plane, things often appear that move quite unusually through the air.
There's a lot of technology like that is still classified on the Raptor and things like that. And it's got stealth technology, and it has the directional exhaust, so I can stand there just like this, motionless in the sky. And it can't be spotted by a radar. The enemy doesn't know what's coming, so it doesn't know what hit him. Just as a Taliban.
One peek inside the US government archives brings many films of once secret military projects from the 50s to light. This was the great age of the UFO wave. Once the classified status was lifted, eyewitnesses suddenly recognized UFOs and aliens of the period as crash test dummies, weather balloons, and prototypes of aircraft models that never went into production. And yet, even after these pictures were published, the UFO phenomenon continued. The reports and the stories grew more and more mysterious. It might be because Nellis Air Force Base is still known by another name, Area 51, supposedly a high-security installation within the military base. For years, rumors have circulated among UFO believers that the Air Force has stored the wrecks of crashed UFOs in subterranean bunkers and has been reverse engineering their technology. No evidence of this exists. The US government has either remained silent about the rumor, taken no position on it, or denied it. Conspiracy theorists see this as confirmation of their position. Under heavy pressure from the public, the US government ordered an examination of the UFO phenomenon. In 1969, the final report with the codename Project Blue Book provided explanations for more than 12,000 UFO sightings. Everything was there, just no actual UFO. Questionnaires relating to the project had been collected and checked for 20 years, but for 700 of these cases, there was no explanation. Some of these documents are classics and have achieved cult status. One example is a spooky film that allegedly shows the autopsy of a dead alien. Even when minimal effort has proven this clip to be a fake, it's still enough to allow the UFO legend to live on.
I need one more napkin. One more napkin.
Put it onto the alien. They're washable. It's not that
Can we have some more blood? Wardrobe. All right, bro. Ready? Alien autopsy. The real thing.
The alien autopsy film has already become a modern myth and has taken its place in American pop culture.
Checking its pulse.
pretty lucrative business to sell little alien trinkets and stuff like that. I think people are interested in connecting to the universe, but I don't think it's going to be as simple as having hominid-looking creatures, you know, human-looking creatures with big eyes.
I mean, it's kind of fun to think about all that kind of stuff, but I think at the same time, it probably isn't really even going to touch on how great reality would be if such a thing existed.
Exactly.
And
the science is always so much more exciting because nature surprises you.
At the computer, Lawrence and Sean lay down the sound recordings of the whales in individual sections and analyze the structure of the noises. In doing so, they find a clearly hierarchical structure that until now was only known in human languages. Individual sound clips are put together by the whales into phrases that are continually repeated and thus create the vocalizations. However, these researchers don't want to speak of a language of the whales just yet, as this form of communication is not complex enough compared to human language.
Some anthropologists have said that the complexity of societies drove the complexity of their communication systems. Now, this has yet to be shown, but if it's true, then measuring the complexity of an extraterrestrial communication system may be highly indicative of the complexity of that society.
As a science fiction author, David Brin has often depicted what a signal from space might sound like, and he would very much like to hear a real one. But up until now, the universe has cloaked itself in silence, and it is this quiet that frightens him.
If there are a lot of wise alien species out there, and they are keeping quiet, should we not consider following their example? Is it not possible that they have reasons for keeping quiet?
Alexander Zaitsev sees no value in keeping quiet. He's already pulling strings to be able to transmit his next message in the near future, in the interest of all humans, as he sees it. If not in Yevpatoria, then from another telescope.
We're not giving away anything of strategic value or anything that could be secret. Just things that would be interesting. Classical music, for example. Something like Beethoven or Tchaikovsky. If we transmit music like that, we're certainly not betraying any secrets. On the contrary, we're sending them the best that our culture has produced. Our art, our literature, our thoughts on aesthetics, behind which lies humanistic thought. And I can find nothing criminal in that.
If we beam everything that we have to trade as a gift, all of our culture, all of our music, all of our science, all of our books, then what will we have to trade with? The people who do this may be known in the future as the worst traitors to humanity ever.
David Brin has recently spoken out harshly against those who wish to advertise humanity in space. He is amazed that hardly anyone else is speaking out when it has to do with the security and safety of our planet in the cosmos.
The Earth is a very fragile place. We've already proved that just one intelligent life form can endanger it. It is possible that more than one would be more than the Earth can take. Personally, I like diversity. I like tolerance. But humanity has to get its act together. That's our #1 priority.